Midnight Drearies.
Nathaniel Criterio had always been a devout Catholic, unwavering in his faith and commitment to the Church. He had always believed that God was good and that the Church was the only way to salvation. But that was before he became the Grand Inquisitor of La Nueva Inquisición, the New Inquisition. In his commanding role, he has discovered that monsters and witches are real, not just fairy tales and boogeymen intended to scare children into behaving. They walked among the people, hiding in plain sight. The Vatican had deemed it necessary to rid Italy of these threats, and Nathaniel was their instrument of justice. Nathaniel rode through the city in the back of a deep blood-red convertible 1975 Cadillac Eldorado accompanied by 3 acolytes. His matching red robes billowing behind him as he would often sit atop the seat headrest. He held a cross in one hand and a sword in the other. Many of the night creatures were effectively bulletproof, and it took a solid stroke from a blade to truly harm them, especially the undead. Plus, it was much quieter than discharging multiple rounds within the city limits. His eyes scanned the crowds, looking for any signs of evil. He had the power to execute witches on the spot, and he was not afraid to use it. As he made his way through the streets, he could hear the whispers of the people. Some feared him, others praised him. Nathaniel paid them no mind. He had become a spectacle on local news and social media. But he was on a mission from God, facing dangers they would never know, as long as he continued his successful holy errand. He had the driver stop the car. The Pope had granted Nathaniel the power to detect beings of evil. He entered a small alleyway that led to flowery courtyards set in the middle of ancient stone buildings. He saw a group of women huddled together. They wore long tattered black robes and had their heads bowed. Nathaniel approached them, his sword drawn. "Who are you?" he demanded. "We are the Sisters of the Black Moon," one of them said. "We are witches." Nathaniel's heart pounded in his chest. He had never encountered witches before. He raised his sword, ready to strike. But before he could, the women vanished. Nathaniel looked around, bewildered. Had they used some kind of magic to escape? He shook his head and continued on his way. He had more important matters to attend to. The wild men of Krakow were a menace to the people of Italy. They were a group of feral humans who lived in the abandoned town of Krakow. They preyed on travelers and were said to be able to transform into beasts. Nathaniel rode out to Krakow, accompanied by a small army of acolytes. The town was eerie, its streets empty and its buildings crumbling. Nathaniel felt a chill run down his spine. Suddenly, a group of men appeared from the shadows. They were naked and covered in filth. They growled at Nathaniel and his men, their eyes wild. Nathaniel drew his sword and charged forward. The men snarled and attacked. Nathaniel fought with all his might, his sword flashing in the moonlight. It was a brutal battle, but in the end, Nathaniel emerged victorious. The wild men of Krakow were no more. Next, Nathaniel set his sights on the Stradiria Infernal Witches' Council. They were said to be the most powerful witches in all of Italy, and they had to be stopped. Nathaniel led a raid on the council's headquarters, a hidden underground lair. The witches were prepared for him, however. They had set up traps and defenses, and they fought fiercely. Nathaniel battled his way through the witches, his sword cleaving through their limbs, disrupting their magic. He finally reached the leader of the council, a powerful witch named Lilith. "Your reign of terror ends here," Nathaniel said, his voice echoing through the chamber. Lilith sneered at him. "You have no idea what you are dealing with, Inquisitor. The power of the old gods is beyond your understanding." Nathaniel raised his sword. "I don't need to understand. All I need to do is destroy you." The battle was long and brutal, but Nathaniel emerged victorious once again. The Stradiria Infernal Witches' Council was no more. Nathaniel was called to the town of Treviso. It had become quite the tourist destination. Treviso had an ogre problem. The sightseers thought they were actors or even possibly visiting basketball Americans due to their size, until being robbed by them. The locals were powerless to do anything. The caddy went zooming down the cobblestone streets and across the canal bridges until they found the group of monster thugs. It was Nathaniel and his 3 acolytes versus 5 ogres. Though the fighting was intense, Nathaniel's ever-growing skill in battle was enough to ensure their victory. As the ogre leader lay dying, Nathaniel asked if there were others. It replied, "I piss on you and your wicked god. Soon your eyes will be opened." Bearing no information, Nathaniel beheaded the last ogre. They inquired around town and discovered that there had only been 5 ogres. The townsfolk were most grateful and many promised to donate to the church, or at least start attending Sunday service again. Nathaniel returned to the Vatican to report to Pope Francis on his successful crusade across Italy to rid the countryside of the growing dark menace. "What is evil?" the Pope asked him. Nathaniel did not understand the context of the question. The Pope continued, "It is a societal construct, the idea of good and evil. One used throughout our history, tribal instincts that keep us separated from our true nature, convinced that we are good and the other is evil. The US has dropped this facade. While their people claim righteousness, they still clamor for blood. Warfare. And when they don't get it, they turn on each other. The Vikings are not gone, they simply hopped in their little boats and sailed across the ocean and called themselves Americans. They are no different than the wild men of Krakow, they are simply bathed and better kempt." "What are you saying?" Nathaniel asked. "Are we to spread the new Inquisition to America? God has commanded not to suffer a witch to live, and the United States must be filled with millions of them. I can prepare to leave at once." Pope Francis cut him off. "Do not speak to me of God's will. The old man's posh respite in the perfumed towers of the Sunset City in the Dreamlands is a permanent vacation. He has abandoned us. Left to our own devices, we have sullied the garden. Man is not worthy." Nathaniel replied, "You speak madness," and he gripped tightly the pommel of his sword. "You have fought well the forces of darkness," Pope Francis said. "It is time to finish initiating you into the power of the Grand Inquisitor." With that, the frail white pope began to shake and shift form. His fingers became claw-like and his bony arms grew long and spindly. His face distorted with a pointy chin and sharp jagged teeth. He grabbed Nathaniel by the head with both hands, and bolts of electricity ran from the Pope's fingertips into the body of the faithful Inquisitor. Nathaniel could no longer stand and fell to his knees. "There, the laying of hands is complete," Francis said. "Now rise, my knight of darkness. Take your place by my side." Nathaniel shouted out, "I'll never join you. I only serve the one true God," and drew his sword and attacked Pope Francis. It was a fight like none he had ever fought, one not just for his life, but for his soul. In the end, Pope Francis was slain. Nathaniel stood there, panting and sweating, as the body of the Pope lay at his feet. He had defeated the undead creature, but at what cost? He had lost his faith and his purpose, and now he had to face the reality of what he had done. He looked around at the opulent surroundings of the Vatican and felt a deep sense of disgust. The corruption, the power struggles, the politics, it was all a far cry from the simple message of love and compassion that he had been taught as a child. Nathaniel knew that he could not go back to his old life, to the new Inquisition and its brutal methods. He needed to find a new path, a new way to serve the higher power, one that was not tainted by the corrupting influence of power and politics, and the undead. As he stood there, lost in thought, he heard a voice behind him. "You have done well, Nathaniel. You have proven yourself worthy." He turned to see a figure standing in the shadows, a figure that seemed to radiate a strange, otherworldly energy. "Who are you?" Nathaniel asked. "I am Nyarlathotep," the figure replied. "And I have been watching you. I am pleased with what I have seen." Nathaniel felt a shiver run down his spine. He had heard the name before, in whispers and legends, but he had never thought that it could be real. "What do you want from me?" Nathaniel asked. "I want you to join me," Nyarlathotep said. "To help bring about the end of this world and the beginning of a new one. You have many names for it, choose whichever one you like." Francis was weak, but his words were true, no matter how bitter they may still ring in your ears. "Our paths lead to the same place. You can think of me as the last horseman, riding upon my pale steed. I will give you the names and locations of the Antichrists, of which there are many, and you may continue to serve your little god in his big bad final war." Nathaniel thought to himself, was this the angel of Exodus? "Beware of him, and obey his voice, provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. And I will be an adversary unto thine adversaries. The enemy of my enemy is my friend." No. That is false faith. He is still my enemy. Nathaniel replied to Nyarlathotep, "Yes, I will ally with you to continue the Lord's work and cleanse this world of evil." "All evil?" Nyarlathotep laughed. "Your subtle threat does not go unheard. And I would expect nothing less.